Our beautiful planet is under attack by diseases that are connected. Climate change, biodiversity loss, pandemics. But we've been treating these diseases in isolation, with insufficient resources and usually too late. EarthTeam explores solutions that can protect our planet and people in a more proactive, preventive, and holistic way. Join us as we explore this new planetary health approach.
Let's go now to our spotlight. As I open up here, since we've got a couple new people, and just to remind those others and those who are watching, EarthTeam is a global alliance of organizations and individuals united in protecting our planet from pandemics, species loss, climate change, and habitat destruction. We share a vision, a world reset, with species increasing, temperatures decreasing, natural areas expanding, and communities thriving sustainably and safe from outbreaks. One of the things that we've run up against is a communications challenge. And so we're looking for ways to popularize our approach, the planetary health approach, which we will speak interchangeably tonight with One Health. And one way of doing that, I think, is to talk to people from the regenerative health industry. So we've invited tonight Dr. Erik Fleischman, who is both a leading anti-aging doctor and an emerging infectious disease expert who has worked at the front lines of outbreak detection in Africa for the Clinton Foundation while advising hospitals and patients in Asia on mitigating the spread of COVID-19. His anti-aging clients range from celebrities to the general public. Dr. Fleischman served as the International Medical Director for Thailand's leading hospital, Bumrungrad, and currently advises clinics and clients across the globe. Welcome, Erik. I know you're probably in the latest time zone of anybody tonight. Usually we've got more people out there in Bangkok. You might be in Hanoi or Thailand. I'm not sure. Where are you right now?
Ho Chi Minh City.
Okay, Ho Chi Minh City. Well, real glad to have you. What I'm going to do, Erik, as I explained before talking, is I'm just going to do a couple slides here just to get the conversation started, and then we'll just go from there. All right. And thanks to Prana for helping me put these slides together. Again, I'm going to speak interchangeably between One Health and Planetary Health. Let's not get too hung up about that, although it is important, I think, that we stick with Planetary Health because it says more about what we're doing, but there's a lot of overlap. So we know that EarthTeam is looking at the various threats. We don't look at anything in isolation. Pandemics, climate change, biodiversity loss, and for that matter, poverty, they share common drivers and point to the same solution, which I think the international community has coined as One Health. It's a silent solution. It's a good approach. It's really simple, right? Protecting the health of people, ecosystems, animals at the same time. To prevent all those problems. Problem is, it's, if you speak to most people in the world right now, even those who are highly educated, they probably don't know what One Health is. They would struggle to define it for you. Meanwhile, the regenerative health industry, for lack of a better term, anti-aging, is booming. People are clearly focused a lot on their personal health and longevity, perhaps more collectively speaking than the planet's health and longevity. We, of course, are a global alliance, over 100 individuals and organizations. And I think we need help from the regenerative health sector so we can scale global uptake of what we're working on. Specifically, we need help from experts like Erik and others to convey the message, help us convey the message in a compelling way that individual personal health and planetary health are connected. How can you have one without the other? And I would submit that, for the regenerative health sector, the benefits of getting involved with us and exploring this, it's not a solution we'll come up with, necessarily tonight, but just starting that journey is to, help us grow and ride the wave of environmental awareness. I would hope it leads to more clients for, certain clinics and experts like that, and collectively we'll have more impact. We're working around the world. We've got frontline projects on wildlife protection, habitat protection, and regenerative agriculture. And some of us are working on all of that or more than one to create these models. We've done a pretty good job before when we've had support to reach a pretty big audience with our CNN ads, CNBC, et cetera. Our solutions, we're frontline, and for that matter, other solutions are on this topic are not reaching a huge audience yet. We'd like to scale it. So, Erik, what I want to really talk with you about with our audience here, and I'll stop sharing my screen here in a second so we can all go on screen, is, we're having a hard time from our side making planetary health, One Health, I'm going to call it generally the same thing right now, making it personal. And even had a conversation with Bruno last week with the USAID professional. They see the same sort of challenge that most people don't understand it. At the same time, there's a huge amount of funding starting to be released in this area, and I think part of the problem is the messaging is being packaged by the people who are bottling One Health. It's technical experts, maybe not communications. So you've worked in both of these areas. You've been at the front line on outbreaks and prevention, et cetera. You understand what we're talking about. You're one of the few doctors I've chatted with actually who gets what we're talking about, and you're into it. And you're also treating people and responding to this growing demand of people like look good, live longer, et cetera. How can we link up what you're doing with what we're doing? What's the challenge? What do you got any ideas, or how can we get this conversation started?
Well, Steve, first of all, thanks for having me on. So I've been, just for the people here, I've been doing anti-aging medicine for about 30 years. I'm probably the most experienced anti-aging regenerative doctor in Asia now, for sure. Before that, I was an oncologist and infectious disease doctor, and then I got board certified in regenerative medicine as well. So I think if you have to look at where you came from to try to figure out where you're going. You know what I mean? So if you look at regenerative medicine now on a technological level, it's huge. And it's very far advanced from where we were 30 years ago. We were just learning about testosterone and staying young and things like that. The sweeping view of it is very personal to people. Everybody wants to stay alive so they can be alive forever for their kids. Nobody wants to die. There's a million reasons they want to look good. But it's a very, I don't know if the right term for it, but it's also a very selfish way to look. Like, I want to stay here. It's not, I want to stay here and I want to make things good for animals. That's why I want to, right? But it almost has the ability to be counterproductive, because as regenerative medicine becomes more accessible, more popular, and is probably growing faster than any other medical discipline, people are going to be alive for longer, and people are going to need more space, more resources. And what happens usually when people require more space and more resources is that animals and the care for animals, other than their house pets, gets pushed out to the periphery. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword like that. So my point is that we are in the infancy of the concept of regenerative medicine. Even though we think we're that advanced, we have not gotten to the point where we're looking at it on a global view. Right now we want to stay alive. We're not sure why we want to stay alive. Yeah. So, I think one of the problems is that if you give people access to good ideas, you get an uptake. But if you expect them to think of these ideas on their own, it's probably not going to happen. But if you let people know you can stay alive longer, you can spread more love and care and humanity to people and to animals and to the environment, then I think that would be the uptake for it. But I think sometimes we just assume that people will know what to do with their longevity. My biggest fear is that I'm going to live to be 100 and I'm going to be bored to tears, right? So I do believe that if you can give people something to do and give them something worthwhile, I think that they'll run with it. And that's my view on it. I'm just a dumb doctor. I always enjoyed animals. I always grew up with animals, But in the past, I'd say 5 years, mostly because of my wife, who Steve knows also, she is a woman who has the biggest heart in the world. She's taught me not only to coexist with animals, but to actually feel the love that you get from them and how they can change an environment. And they're much nicer than people. And I think if you put it on that level where people can relate to it, then I think they're more apt to do something about it. I mean, that's my own personal journey through it. And I was never a real, oh, I love this animal. You know, I've had dogs and cats and things, but now it's become a passion because I've seen how big my wife's heart is for these living creatures. I've held these living creatures. And I think once you do that, you have an irreversible sensitivity and feeling and view towards it. And I think you have to somehow let people know if you're going to live longer, you got to do something with it for the people around you, not just for yourself, not just so you look better or so, you know, you can date and you can look good in Instagram pictures. You know, our world is a very insular world. And that's what we thought the internet was going to open us up. And what it's done is make us very selfish and very self-involved. So, like I said, in summary, I think we're just at the infancy of all of understanding how long life is going to translate out to how we live in our world.
Really interesting. Okay. Well, you've definitely got the conversation going here. I've got 8 points down here, and I'm sure others are going to have some questions, but why don't we just go over some of these? First of all, kind of a two-edged sword here. I get what I'm hearing from the field you work in. There could be a lot of selfishness and people thinking about me, I want to look beautiful or live longer, etc. But also, you know, people need to start thinking about what's your purpose going to be if you're going to stick around. And also overall with social media, you know, here we are. Our slogan is, you know, it takes a team to protect the planet. But as you're mentioning, you know, people are more individual now than, you know, they were before, generally speaking. But you know, the genie's out of the bottle with regenerative health. The demand is growing. Let me put out a couple of questions here. First of all, you know, would you wager to say that a certain percentage of your clients or clinics that you work with would be interested in this kind of thing? Or would it be completely new to them? Because I'm imagining some of the folks that would be, you know, demanding services from regenerative health experts like yourself might actually be aware that, you know, the ecosystem also needs to be healthy for them to live a long life. But maybe I'm wrong. You know, what's your take on that first?
Well, I
You know,
think,
go ahead.
you know, regenerative medicine right now is very expensive. I mean, the way I do it, I was a charity doctor I worked in Beverly Hills, but then I worked in charity, worked in Africa, and worked for NGOs for an equal amount of time that I worked in Beverly Hills. And regenerative medicine right now is for the wealthy, you know, the high income and the wealthy people. And that's because the doctors doing it and the places that picked it up were not charity organizations or public health. They were private doctors, and private doctors, especially in this field, they like to make a lot of money. You don't find, I haven't found any other doctor from the NGO sector who's doing this besides me anywhere in the world. So we have a different view of it. You know what I mean? Money corrupts, people want more money. And then when doctors find out they can make a lot of money doing these things, they're very happy to try to tailor these treatments to the top 5% instead of the top 80%, which is what I want to do, right? Healthier people live longer. That many people living longer are nicer, they're happier, and they're able to do more good in the world. For the clients who are involved in it, you know, they're wealthy and a lot of them are kind of self-absorbed, but I think they're also in a position to make a change if they were given the appropriate way to do it. You know, but to be quite honest and make it very simple, you do have to spoon feed people in these things, especially in the infancy. You got to say, hey, there's this project is specifically doing this, and it's got to be something that they can feel passionate about. Dogs, cats, it depends what animals, if you go to this group of people in Vietnam, and here it's a very wealthy group of people who are doing regenerative medicine treatments. If you start talking to them about saving elephants in Africa, it's not going to be unfortunately, it's not going to be in the forefront of what they feel they need to do. But I believe if you can start off by making this local and regional in each in each area, then you kind of have a gateway drug, as it were, to understanding how big it could be and how much good they can do. I believe that people really do want to do good at any level, but I do believe that people don't have a vehicle to do it, and then it's out of sight, out of mind, right? We're a very distracted human race these days. And if you can't find something that tugs your heartstrings, it's going to be in and out of your mind in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, and you're definitely in the middle of the marketing world on the regen health. I guess my question is, besides the philanthropic feel-good factor, do you think we can convince people that protecting the planet is actually good for them individually too, even from that selfish point of view? One of the things that comes to mind is that it became popular for a while, with some people it still is forest bathing. People going into forests and actually feeling better and, cleansing their mind and cleaner oxygen, et cetera. And it also raises, the question, well, I'm not going to be forest bathing if we don't have forests. So it's easy to make that connection. So I'm wondering, we're sort of at despite the huge amounts of money, and I'm talking, billions of dollars on One Health that are being dispersed now. I don't see anybody really making the connection and making this One Health or planetary health approach personal.
Right. That's what I mean. I think if you do it, and especially because you're dispersed all over the planet, you do have to make it personal. And the way to make it personal is making it about their community, their animals, their humanity, their circle. I mean, that's what people, otherwise it's a very distracting time. I mean, I would love to work for everybody, but I don't have the time to do it. So if I get a vehicle whereas I can use my talents towards it, then I'm more than happy and I'll jump into it with full enthusiasm. I think it's the same way if you take a regional approach and you don't make this central, but you make it satellite, then I think you're going to find people who want to get involved in their own community. And I think that's the way that you save the world anyway, because
right.
That's the way it works, unfortunately.
I'm going to start to open it up here, but before I do that, Erik was around when Jane Seymour came over to Thailand, and we got her out to Khao Yai National Park, filmed that Mother Earth Speaks video, and that's where we were trying to personify, or Mother Nature. Basically, she played Mother Nature, and in sort of a 1-minute video, we see nature behind her, and then we see pictures of outbreaks and destruction of habitat and wildlife trade. And she kind of turns to the camera and says, protect me and you protect yourself.
Protect me and you protect yourselves.
One thing we were thinking about after that was, getting her to help recruit other key female influencers to also play the part of Mother Earth in these different local settings. You could have a Vietnamese woman, for example, against some famous natural heritage spot in the country that everybody in Vietnam relates to, and having, obviously tailoring the message, but always coming to that last tagline, protect me and you protect yourselves. That's one of the ideas that we've come up with, but we're looking for others.
But see, wait, to what you were talking about, making it personal, like when I decided I want to do longevity medicine, everybody's got their reason. I mean, for themselves. I'm 65, but I want to stay young. I'm like you. I got young kids. The reason I want to stay alive longer is so I have more time with my family. You know what I mean? And when somebody comes in and they say, I want to live longer, what I want to offer them is more time with their family, more time with their loved ones, more time being connected to something. And then when you have that connection, then it stops being about how you look or who you're going to go out with, or even a celebrity, right? Because celebrity endorsements only go so far. I've treated a lot of celebrities. I understand that. But when you can make it personal, if somebody knew that that land that you're creating is going to be there for their children or their animals or their dog or their cat, all of a sudden it becomes important. And, you know, like I said, we're a very distracted race these days, overly distracted. It drives me crazy. But
Incredible.
when it's personal, it's personal. And that doesn't change.
Good points. Yeah, why live forever if you have no purpose? And legacy is lovely, right? Especially we got kids, grandkids. We want them to remember us in the right way. Anybody got any points or questions for Dr. Erik here?
I jump in. This is Pai. But I'm interested as I'm coming late, so apologies for the delay. I don't know. For one house point of view, the conservation for more wildlife conservation, people have less kind of think about the plant-based food. And I don't know, what do you think in longevity for the plant-based food? How do you think about this, you know, particularly in relation to the One Health?
Very, very interesting question, because I'm very mixed on it. So from a scientific point of view, all right, protein is essential. Protein is absolutely essential for your immune system, especially as you get older. Protein becomes even more important because of muscle loss, immune dysfunction, hormonal dysfunction. And my only concerns with that are the ability to take enough proteins in. Otherwise, absolutely. Plant-based, it was funny. It's funny you mentioned that. Last week, I was invited up to my friend's hotel. Russell Simmons is the guy who ran Def Jam Records, right? He's a billionaire. So he invited me up to his, he has a new project in Bali. And we got there and I found out it's completely vegan. And I am not vegan by any stretch of the word. But we get there, it's vegan, it's no animal products, it's no alcohol, no smoking, you know, which for a vacation doesn't seem like the usual vacations that I go on. But I'll tell you, I had no idea that being vegan for that time period could not only be so satisfying, but also enjoyable. You know, the word wasn't out there. I was a convert. So my view on health, though, is as you get older, I think being vegan when you're younger is great and it's an easy thing to do. As you get older, especially for women, my concern is the lack of protein. And without protein, you're going to experience deterioration and it will affect your longevity.
But if there's loss of the protein-based powder or the protein-based like protein intakes, would that be a good replacement to, you know?
What's interesting, protein, like amino acids are not amino acids are not amino acids. As it turns out, even with, like, for instance, collagen, right? Everybody likes to take in collagen. Well, not all collagens are created equal. Meat-based collagen is the strongest collagen. Of all the collagens, that's the one that makes you make more, heal faster, make more collagen, bigger muscle, as opposed to plant-based collagens, which are inferior in that aspect. So that would come down to a matter of being able to take in enough plant collagen that would equal the effect of a meat-based or chicken-based or fish-based collagen. And it really is, it's actually significant. And people otherwise just go, oh, collagen is plant-based collagen, this must be good. But like I said, when you break it down, especially for the people who really need collagen production, like older women, it may not be sufficient by just plant-based proteins. I mean, I'm not making a judgment, but I'm just the messenger. That's the way the science works.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Pei. I should have had that on my list too. And I want to come back to that. It just reminded me of another point. I want to make a little time here for Andre, but we're going to come back to the plant-based protein before we close. Andre, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Dr. Erik. I wonder if you could clarify. You referred to your work, the Beverly Hills type work with high net worth individuals, and then you referred to your pro bono voluntary volunteer work, or what you call it, I forgot, social work. How would you, in your own mind, professional mind, translate your vision that you're applying in this high net worth clientele domain, and what you could see, would work to promote your ideas in the non high net worth world, which is what we're typically experiencing in our work.
I understand what you're saying. That's a very good question. It used to be one of my favorite topics. So I was a senior advisor for the Clinton Foundation. I was an HIV specialist because I started out as an oncologist. I worked for them. I worked for Family Health International. I worked for U.S. Doctors for Africa. And unfortunately, what I found with NGO work was very inefficient implementation of projects, because a lot of people were volunteer, a lot of people were transient. With the Clinton Foundation, it was people trying to get a leg up so they could get into government. You know what I mean? So they never really had a stake into it, a professional stake into it. Then I went and worked for the enemy, as it were. I was running a hospital in the middle of the jungle in Indonesia for Newmont Mining, right? Who was a private mining company, gold, silver, copper, everything. They're one of the biggest ones in the world. And with them, they were committed. In order to renew their mining license, they had to have a community social responsibility project. Each and every mine in the world has millions of dollars that are for community social responsibility, and they're dying to do it. They need to spend this money, because otherwise it sits there, then they lose it on their budget, and then they don't get their mining license. So my idea years ago, although I ended up with a family and didn't do it, is to create a professional NGO that only works for private sector community social responsibility companies like Newmont, Freeport McMoran, Chevron, the big one from Indonesia. All these companies have so much money earmarked that they want to spend, as opposed to the NGO people who have to beg to get a foothold and then change their staff every 6 months. It's a very inefficient way of doing things. So what I would do if I were you, and I am you, is I would start going to these corporations. Do you have CSR money? We got a great project for you. It's a win-win for them. It's money they're going to write off on their taxes because they're corporate entities. I know that because I worked for a bunch of mining companies. And it's goodwill for them. It makes them look good to the governments that they work for. And they're actually more important than the government agency that you're going to, who won't have the clout that a private sector company that employs so many people, that provides healthcare for so many people, that they have to engage in order to keep their business going. And quite honestly, that's how I was going to do it, except I didn't want to run all over the world when I had children. But that's the way it will work, and that's a slam dunk. Right away, that you're off the ground. And what I used to tell these companies is I would go in, I'm a doctor, but I loved learning about mining and oil and gas because the technology is fascinating. So I found out that a haul truck costs $4.2 million, like a big haul truck for a gold or copper mining company. I said, you take the cost of one haul truck and you put that into your CSR work for this project, and you give them deadlines, you give them receivables, you give them deliverables, and they will thank you to do it, and they will keep throwing money at you for it. And let's be honest here, it takes that kind of money and that kind of exposure in order to get these things off the ground. And in doing that, you get to avoid the inefficient NGO model that's always begging for money and begging for people and trying to maintain staff. You know what that's like. It's very frustrating. And it's what made me get out of NGO work, because I found out I could actually benefit more people if I did it from the corporate side. No matter what you think about those corporations, they still employ people. They still provide health care. You know, it's not like working for the devil. It's like using the devil's money to get done what needs to get done. I would love to be part of any organization that wants to set this up. And I know how to talk to these people too. I know how to talk. Haul truck prices versus CSR, but that's what it's going to.
No, thanks, Erik.
Sorry, just a quick. So, would you have, off the top of your head, or maybe in your records, an example of any such project? Not necessarily the one you were directly involved with, but which you're familiar with. Maybe we could, look it up and read it up and learn more about some such example.
Well, each one for each company does it within their own community. They have to. So to tell you the truth, most of them just want to check it off the list because they'll hire a couple people to buy a couple of ultrasound machines and put it in the hospital. For the one that we were doing, and this was back in Sumbawa, Indonesia in 2011, 2014, was cutting down birthing deaths, right? And increasing the amount of prenatal care, which is a no-brainer. You train a couple ultrasounds, you train some ultrasound techs, you put the ultrasounds out in the community, and it works on that level. Now, of course, these are in small communities, but this is all scalable.
Yeah. We're going to go to Bruce in a second, and thanks for bringing up the corporate angle. It's definitely something that we have discussed, and we have connected with certain corporate circles. We've gone in a lot of directions, but it's good to hear from you that you think that would be a good focus. In fact, we've even talked about incorporating EarthTeam as a company with a nonprofit arm, which we are in a position to do quite quickly for reasons I won't go into right now, and offering our collective expertise, solutions, and tools to the community, including corporations. So thanks for bringing that point up.
Sure, I see, but you don't have to be nonprofit for it. In fact, it's been my experience that the corporations would be much more apt to hire somebody with a professional company because they know you're going to have deliverables. And that was my experience with it.
Right. So we do have, and this is good for others to hear, we've talked about in the coordination unit, but just so the group knows, if we want, we could incorporate EarthTeam as a for-profit company, but still maintain a nonprofit arm for also getting grants. So it's like best of both worlds. We could approach the corporations, and for that matter, some government agencies that don't want to deal with NGOs either.
Right. It's been my experience that corporations sign checks a lot faster than grants do, with a lot less paperwork.
Mine too. Definitely. I'm so glad you made that point. Thank you.
Slam dunk, man.
Bruce, and then after Bruce, we got Bruno.
Real quick, that I think you've already kind of half answered the question, but as EarthTeam and kind of pitching to corporations that are trying to do this, what sort of things are they looking for? What are they going to be most focused on? I mean, is it really like, hospitals in the community, is like that the main thing, or are they open to other kinds of ideas, and what will they be looking for? You mentioned deliverables, obviously, and that's key.
Right.
But just coming from that mindset, which most of us are not from, what sorts of things, how would we want to craft our projects to appeal to them on that sort of thing?
Right. Well, you just have to do the reasonable amount of recon for the region and see what their problems are. Which is pretty easy to find out once you know a region. Like, I went into Mozambique for veil mining, and we saw that Mozambique is just it's got the most natural gas in Africa, and it's the third poorest country. So healthcare, whenever it's a poor country, healthcare is always a problem. So you just do a little bit of research and find out what their problems are. Or what I found out, the way I really went around it was when I was with U.S. Doctors for Africa, there was the first lady. You see, all the first ladies in Africa, and you probably know this already, there's a first ladies organization. So I went to the first lady of the country, like in Angola, what's your pet project? Because the corporations are going to go where the first lady wants to go, right? Because they need to develop their goodwill with those people in the government that are writing their license every year. And they were more than happy to tell me what their pet projects are. Now in Africa, of course, in most places, it's real easy, right? Pet project is women's health. That's a no-brainer. Everybody needs women's health. But you could also tailor this. It doesn't have to be about women, and it doesn't have to be about people. If you tailor this to animal preservation or whatever aspects of it that are going to serve what your goals are with animals, you could do that too. But you do your recon, you ask them, what is it you want and what is it you need? And if you're talking to the corporate people on the ground, they're going to know what the sensitive trigger points are. But I'm telling you, when I had this idea, it just made so much sense to me. But the scope of it and the amount of people that you would need and the management involved in it is what made me decide to just maintain my own practice. But it was something, it'd be my dream to do that because makes so much sense. And there's so much money, there's so much excess money that these corporations would hand over willingly within a week if you had a good project, as opposed to the grants that are going to take you a lot of, pulling fingernails and filling out forms to get a couple drops. So anyway, that's my idea with it. But you do your proper recon. You talk to the people involved and you talk to people in the government, and they'll tell you what they want you to do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bruno.
Yeah, I was going back to your initial question, Steve, about the link between individual health and planetary health, and the question of messaging and communication. And we discussed that when you were in DC. And sort of thinking about what Dr. Erik said about the fact that we are all distracted and people are just not able to focus. It seems to me that when people started really to focus is at the beginning of the pandemic, when they saw a direct link between something that is happening in nature and their health and people dying around them and so forth. And that leads me to think that we are not talking enough about the linkages between the sort of the dysfunction in a planet and the major disease that people are affected by, cancer or degenerative disease, Parkinson and so forth. And it seems to me that in the communication angle there is something to do there to really focus people's attention. We talk about living longer, but what about not living too short or too quickly? What about realizing the direct links between those big diseases that we cannot beat and the dysfunction that we see on the planet? So that's my sense is that we should spend a bit more time thinking about that or communicating about that.
Bruno, I want to piggyback onto that because you and I were in the same room where we had this conversation with folks, and I'm glad you brought us back to that. Erik, you're familiar with these different gurus. I consider you way up there. I read Peter Attia's book called Outlive. I found it interesting because he basically talks about the four horsemen, and going back to what Bruno's saying, all these things are connected. What he said, the four horsemen were, for personal health, what kills us early, right? Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, and cancer, I guess, is the four things. And he was pointing out that these things are also they're connected. And if you take it back to what we're looking at, what I showed on the screen before, climate change, species loss, habitat loss, viral outbreaks, there's a connection to them. And so instead of treating these things as a stovepipe, we're trying to bring all the expertise here, not just animal and wildlife conservation, but people working on, those different aspects, climate mitigation, et cetera. Not to be cynical here, but, what we're trying to do is sell prevention. Do you think that's possible?
I mean, what I always tell people, because, when I was at Bumrungrad Hospital, it's the busiest medical tourism hospital in the world right now. marketing is crucial because they have to market to 200 different countries in order to get patients, and they do it very well. But what I have found out in marketing, see, when people used to mark holistic health and quote wellness, and this, it always evolves. There's no urgency to that, right? They go, oh, your wellness. And they're like, well, I'm worried about my prostate, not my wellness. So I'm going to put a pin in that and hold it back, right? In medicine, in anti-aging medicine especially, fear-based marketing is the only thing that works.
Yeah.
Right? You can put a picture of a heart and a bunch of vegetables, but if you put a picture of a guy grabbing his chest, all of a sudden everybody's going to worry about their heart attack. You have to bring it directly to people and spoon feed them the fear that makes them act. I mean, it sounds a little coercive, but it's not. I mean, you're doing it for the good of them and the good of everybody. So my most successful, yeah, I'm very lucky because all the ventures I've chosen have been successful, but the ones that have had the most uptake have had a basis in fear marketing, showing people exactly what can happen. Right? Not showing them, take care of yourself, exercise. They're like, they've heard that so many times, they don't want to hear it again. But if you hear don't have a stroke, this is a stroke, all of a sudden they're going to pay attention. And with so many different distractions and so many different advertisements, you can't afford to lose your message within somebody else's distraction. You have to be the fear that makes them act.
Thank you.
Right.
We're going to close here soon. We've kept Erik a little longer, I thought, but I do want to come back to Pei's really important point. Just reminding, like, we've seen these things on Netflix, right? Like guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger now. He's not a vegan, right? He still eats a bit of meat, but he's eating less. As you get older, you're saying you need more protein and stuff. Is the jury out or in on whether we could, rely on plant-based protein? Do you just need to eat more or more cleverly to stay healthy? Because this dovetails to, other work we're doing, not just to reduce the amount of animals being killed, but also land that's being cleared for cows and stuff like that, reducing that. What do you think?
I think in theory, yes, it could. I think that if you look at the places with the most longevity, right? In fact, I was just working there last month. Okinawa, Japan, has the most what do you call somebody?
Centenarians.
Centenarians, thank you. Has the most, and what they have is they eat very little meat. They eat a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables, but they also live in one of the most beautiful environments you can find, and that has a lot to do with it. But that kind of circles around to it. So, yes, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. I think the uptake on plant-based, I think the growth of plant-based foods and the popularity and the number of people changing over to it has been huge over the last 5 years. But it's never going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be very difficult to get rid of a message that's been around for probably several thousand years. You know what I mean? But it will get bigger and bigger and bigger the more you can promote how important it is, not just on a physical level, but to help the environment around them, not the one in the world, because people honestly don't give a shit about that, right? But their own environment around them is where you start. And if you start with that, it becomes personal, and then they'll find out it's a good reason to do it. But yeah, you could potentially.
That's a good place for us to end here. And I just want to thank Dr. Erik Fleischman. Everybody, look this guy up. I can show you the different sites. You'd have a hard time getting in the door because he's super busy, but he does help a lot of clinics, and who knows, he's definitely worth knowing more about. We just got a little piece of him tonight, but I appreciate you coming on board, chatting with us late at night, sharing, and I'll probably follow up with you at some point on some of the points that you made tonight. So it was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Steve. It's good to see you.